Part 1. I had always believed that ambition was a kind of compass, pointing me toward the life I thought I deserved. When I left my tiny Oddish village behind for London, I told myself I was chasing a future. Glass towers, numbers glowing on screens, my name attached to deals that mattered, the busyness of the city, the voices, the lights, the endless push forward. It all felt like proof that I was moving somewhere important. But London also swallowed me in ways I hadn't expected. By my fourth night, I was already exhausted, barely sleeping, constantly anxious that I'd make some humiliating mistake at work. So, when Liam suggested drinks in Shoreditch, I didn't hesitate. Maybe I needed noise, laughter, a pint in hand, something to ground me. We met outside the overground station, neon reflections rippling in puddles on the cracked pavement. Sophie teased me for looking like I dressed for a funeral, in my black coat, while Noah gave me one of his soft smiles that made me feel, briefly, less like an alien. Together, we pushed into the heart of Shoreditch, bars spilling light and music onto the streets, and murals looming on brick walls, every alley alive with. But I was already falling behind when the sound came. A melody, thin and haunting, threading through the noise. It didn't come from the pubs or the buskers. It felt older, like a violin dragged across rotted strings, weaving its way into my bones. I turned my head before I could stop myself. "Emma, come on," Sophie shouted, waving at me. They were already halfway across the intersection. I opened my mouth to answer, but the melody swelled, tugging at me like an invisible hand. My gaze drifted to a narrow gap between two graffiti smeared walls. A sliver of cobblestone disappeared into darkness, lit only by a faint gas lamp that flickered unnaturally. I told myself I'd just look. Just for a second, the alley closed, and as soon as I stepped inside, the sounds of Shoreditch muffled into a distant hum. Damp air wrapped around me. The cobblestones glistened, though no rain had fallen. The melody was louder now, echoing between the walls, teasing me deeper into the labyrinth. At some point, I realized I could no longer hear my colleagues. I turned to retrace my steps and froze. The mouth of the alley was gone. Behind me stretched only more cobblestones, winding endlessly. My breath hitched. I quickened my pace forward, heart pounding. That was when I saw the sign, the Forgotten Tavern. The letters were carved into a rotting wooden board above a crooked doorway. The gas lamp above it hissed weakly, shadows trembling against the brick. My pulse screamed at me to run, but the music, now softer, almost gentle, lulled me forward. My hand pushed the door before my mind could decide. The tavern's air hit me like a tomb. It was cold, unnaturally so, and the dim light seemed pressed down by something heavy, like the weight of centuries. Wooden beams sagged above me. The floor creaked under my boots. Gas lamps flickered against walls stained with smoke and time. And behind the bar stood Gideon, tall, gaunt, scraping the silence. "You found us," he said. I swallowed. I was lost. His lips curved, but it wasn't a smile. That's the only way people arrive. Lost in body, lost in spirit. The tavern chooses. Something in me wanted to laugh it off, call it a gimmick, an act for tourists. But the words caught in my throat. This place didn't feel like an act. House rules, Gideon continued, setting the glass down with a thud. 1. You cannot leave before midnight. 2. Do not look at the clock. 3. Whatever you do, do not acknowledge the lady in crimson. A shiver ran down my spine. What happens if? You'll learn, he interrupted, voice like stone CL, ozing a tomb. I turned, needing to anchor myself, but the tavern was wrong. Patrons hunched at tables, their faces blurred in shadow, some flickering like candle flames. An old man sipped from a mug that never seemed to empty. A sailor with a torn uniform whispered to a child who wasn't there. Every detail was slightly out of time, like the whole room was stitched together from centuries that didn't belong. And then I saw her, in the far corner, the woman in the crimson gown. She sat perfectly still, her dress a faded red that caught the light in strange ways. Her skin was pale, almost luminous, her black eyes sunk into shadow. She didn't move, didn't breathe, but I felt her watching, though her gaze never shifted. My mouth went dry. I turned back to Gideon. "What is this place?" He leaned forward. For an instant, in the warped mirror behind the bar, his reflection twisted, his face stretched, eyes hollow, his mouth jagged with too many teeth. My stomach flipped. "This," he whispered, "Ed, is where the forgotten gather? Those who strayed." Bottles. My pulse thundered in my ears. Somewhere, a clock ticked. My eyes almost darted to its reflex. Instinct but Gideon's. Words snapped like a chain in my head. "Do not look at the clock." I gripped my bag tighter. My voice shook. "I shouldn't be here. My friends are waiting." "No one waits outside once the tea." "Avern takes notice," Gideon murmured, his hands folded on the bar, and slid it toward me. The scent was sweet, almost floral. I wanted to refuse, but thirst clawed at me. I lifted it to my lips. The first tea sip burned, the second soothed. By the third, the room blurred, the whispers grew louder, threading into words I almost understood. Behind me, fabric rustled. I didn't turn. I didn't. Tea need to. I knew it was the woman in crimson, and I realized, with a certainty that froze my blood, midnight was still hours away. The tavern seemed to pulse with a life of its own, as if every creaking beam and every gas lamp exhaled in rhythm with some unseen heartbeat. I gripped the chipped glass until my knuckles ached. I could feel Gideon's eyes on me, sharp and heavy. Atching whether I'd slip, whether I'd make the mistake he turn your back to? Every time I thought about glancing over my shoulder, the rules echoed in my head. Do not acknowledge her. The whispers craw, led in, almost words now. Snatches of voices, some pleading, some mocking, some speaking in languages I didn't recognize. They seemed to come from the patrons, but their mouths hardly move. A sailor at the far end lifted his cup to lips that flickered out of existence mid-motion, only to reappear in the next breath. I shut my eyes, willing myself not to panic. Just hold on. Wait I'll midnight, then I could leave. Time runs differently here, Gideon rasped, as if reading my thoughts. It stretches, it contracts, the impatient suffer more, then Hi me. I whispered before I could stop myself. Something in his jaw tightened, because you listened to the song. My skin crawled. I wanted to ask more, but the tavern seemed to hush itself. A silent CE that felt like a warning. A sudden scrape split the stillness. At the far side of the bar, an old man hunched over a crooked stool, his long coat torn and reeking of mildew, his eyes hollow, rimmed, with gray fixed on me with an intensity that made my stomach twist. He slid his empty glass forward across the bar. "Drink," he croaked. His voice rattled like dry bones. Gideon stared. Arcand, he is not for you. But the old man slammed the glass again, harder, and leaned closer. His eyes were pits, endless and hungering. "Drink." The sound of that word wormed into my skull. My finger twitched toward the glass in front of me, though I didn't want to touch it anymore. "Don't," Gideon warned. His voice was sharp, commanding, but I noticed his reflection in the warped mirror. Roar. It wasn't his voice that came from that twisted face. The reflection's mouth grinned, jagged and wrong, even as Gideon's real lips stayed grim. I looked away quickly, bile rising in my throat. "Then what does he want?" I asked. Gideon leaned closer, his whisper rough and cold. "He wants to trade places." The old man slammed the glass again. The sound splintered through my skull. "Drink." Something cracked in me, the panic I'd been holding back. I clapped my hands over my ears as the whispers rose in unison, a chorus pressing me down. My chest tightened until I could barely breathe, and then tick. The clock. I didn't want to. I swear I didn't want to, but my eyes flicked upward. It hung above the bar, larger than I'd realized, its face warped and cloudy. The hands twitched in unnatural rhythms. jerking forward, snapping back, but the second I looked, the whispers screamed in triumph. No, Gideon hissed, slamming his palm on the bar hard then. Oh, to rattle the glasses. You've done it. The tavern erupted. The lights guttered and flared, casting shadows that didn't match the bodies they belonged to. The patrons flickered faster, some vanishing entirely, leaving their monks to crash to the floor. I couldn't turn, but I felt her approach with every nerve, each step sinking into me like a blade. The whispers bent around her, becoming a single voice that slithered into my ear. You saw the time. I staggered forward, desperate, but the tavern seemed to shift with me. The door was gone again, replaced by wall. The bar stretched farther away. With every step, Gideon's voice cut through, harsh and commanding. Don't run. Running makes her stronger. I froze, chest heaving. The woman's presence pressed against my back now. I felt cold breath at my ear, though no one touched me. Why me? I gasped. What does she want? Gideon's face was grim, but in the mirror, his reflection grinned with, she wants you to stay. I squeezed my eyes shut, refusing to turn, refusing to acknowledge her. My nails dug into my palms, my whole body shook. The old man's glass shattered, and he let out a guttural laugh. Ooh, too late, not yet, Gideon growled, and his voice carried something inhuman, like a low growl beneath the gravel. He grabbed a bottle and hurled it across the bar, shattering it near the crimson figure. The footsteps paused, the whispers faltered. For the first time, the tavern's patrons recoiled, their blurred shapes folding into shadows, hissing like cornered owls. I dared to open my eyes. The clock above the bar no longer ticked. Its hands spun wildly, backwards and forwards, until the face split down the middle with a groan. The air thickened with the scent of iron and smoke. My throat tightened, and then I heard it, the melody again, the same haunting tune that had lured me into the alley. But now it was inside the tavern, vibrating from the walls themselves. I staggered toward Gideon. How do I stop this? You don't, he said flatly. You endure. I can't. You can. Or you'll join them. His hand gestured toward the patrons, who now looked less like people and more like. I thought I'd be sick. Gideon slammed another glass onto the counter. Drink this, and you'll last until midnight. He citated. The last drink had already burned through me like poison veins. I lifted it to my lips. The taste was unbearable, bitter and metallic, like blood and ash. My mind flooded with images: a child crying in a burning street, a woman hanging laundry in a village square that didn't exist, a man drowning in a black river under a sky of red. None of it was mine, but each vision cut into me, as if I had lived it. I slammed the glass down, gasping. My body trembled with cold, but the whispers receded, if only slightly. The footsteps paused again. I looked at Gideon, my throat raw. How much longer until midnight? His eyes too sharp, too ancient, fixed on mine. Long enough for her to decide whether you belong. The gas lamps dimmed again, and in the warped mirror, Gideon's reflection leaned forward, mouth stretching into an inhuman grin, whispering something I couldn't hear. And then, from behind me, the woman in crimson laughed. Low, soft, a sound that promised midnight would not save me. The laughter clung to me, like smoke, curling around my ears, sinking into my skin. It was soft, almost tender, but threaded with cruelty. I didn't dare turn, though, every part of me screamed too. The crimson woman's presence swelled, her shadow pressing against my back, blotting out the dim warmth of the tavern lamps. Gideon's hand slammed against the bar. The sound jolted me like a gunshot. Do not acknowledge her, he barked, though his voice carried a desperate edge I hadn't heard before. I couldn't speak. My throat had closed tight, and my body rigid with terror. The tavern had changed. The air was heavy, syrup thick, every breath dragging fire into my lungs. The patrons were shifting faster now, their forms blinking in and out of existence with every flicker of the lamps. Some reached toward me, higher and sharper, like strings fraying to snapping point. It was everywhere, in the beams, in the floorboards, in my chest. How much longer? I gasped. Gideon's eyes locked on mine. For the first time, I thought I saw fear in them. The clock is broken. Midnight may not come. The bottom dropped out of me. No, I whispered. You said. I said if you survived, he snapped. But the rules bend, and when the rules bend, the tavern feeds. The crimson woman moved again. I didn't see her, but I fell. Her closer, closer, each step sinking into the marrow of my bones. I turned back to Gideon, desperate. Then what do I do? His reflection in the warped mirror grinned wide, teeth jagged, eyes low. But Gideon's real face twisted into something almost human, almost pitying. You leave, if you dare. But the exit demands another price. What price? My voice broke. He didn't answer. Instead, he reached under the bar and set down an old brass key. Gideon growled. The old man at the far stool cackled, his hollow eyes blazing. Don't believe him. Keys are cages, doors AR. He lies. You stay. You stay. The tavern erupted with whispers again. Every patron speaking at once, their voices overlapping into a storm of noise. My head pounded. I clutched the bar to keep from collapsing. And hen dash bang. The tavern's wall shook. Dust rained from the beams. A door had appeared, tall and wooden, iron hinges groaning as it slowly cracked open. Beyond it glowed a faint light, pale and golden, almost like dawn. Hope flared in me, sharp and dangerous. Gideon shoved the key forward. Now, my fingers hovered above it, but when I touched the brass, pain read through me, memories flooding in. Not mine, not human. A battlefield under two suns. A child walking into the sea. A woman's scream echoing inside stone. Each vision burned me as though I'd lived it. I jerked my hand back, trembling. You said it would. Open the door, I cried. It will, Gideon rasped. If you accept the cost. The crimson woman's laughter rippled again, closer now. Almost in my ear. I turned against every rule, against my own instinct, and I saw her. Her face was wrong. Skin like wax, stretched too thin. Her eyes were pits of black, swallowing the light around them. The crimson gown dragged across the floor, shredded and stained, its fabric alive, twisting like tendrils. She tilted her head, and when her lips parted, the whispers poured directly into me. Not sound but weight, crushing my ribs, suffocating me. I screamed, staggering back. The tavern reeled with me, walls stretching, floorboards splintering. The patrons blurred into one mass of faces, all staring, all mouthing my name. Gideon's voice thundered. Run. I grabbed the key and bolted toward the door. The tavern twisted around me, stretching farther, away with every step. The crimson woman drifted after me, gliding, her gown writhing across the floor, her whispers splintering my thoughts into fragments. I ran harder. My lungs burned. My legs threatened to give. But the door loomed closer, the golden light, widening through the crack. I shoved the key forward, into a lock that hadn't been there before. The metal shrieked as it turned. The tavern screamed with it. The walls shook. Bottles exploded. Beams cracked. Gideon roared, his voice layered with countless others. Do not look back. Do not. But I looked, just once, and I saw her right behind me, inches away, her mouth stretched open, impossibly wide, filling with darkness, a void ready to swallow me whole. I shoved the door and flung myself through. Cold air slapped me. I collapsed onto wet cobblestones. The alley stretched around me, empty and still. The door behind me was gone. The tavern was gone. Only silence. I gasped, clutching the stones, sobbing with relief. The air smelled of rain, the faint hum of London's traffic drifting in from somewhere nearby. I scrambled to my feet, pressing against the wall, staring into the empty darkness where the tavern had been. Nothing. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I yanked it out, hands shaking. 4 a.m. I'd only been gone an hour, maybe 2, but the sky was already lightening at the horizon. gray bleeding into pale blue. I laughed hysterical, broken. I was free. But when I caught my reflection in the cracked screen of my phone, my breath froze. Behind my eyes, faint but they're glowing, G-red. I dropped the phone. My heart hammered. The alley was empty. The city was waking. But deep inside me, I heard it, the melody. Soft, patient, waiting. Part 2. I told myself it had been a dream. That was the only way I could get out of bed the next morning. I sat on the edge of the mattress in my flat, the gray London light filtering weakly through the blinds, and I whispered it like a mantra. It wasn't real. You were drunk. You got lost. The tavern didn't exist. The problem Washington's. I could still hear the melody, not constantly, just faint snatches, woven into the drone of the kettle, or the brakes of a bus squealing outside, or the murmur of strangers on the street below. It would flicker into my ear and then vanish, leaving me, shaken, straining for silence. I dressed in a daze, slipped into my black coat, and forced myself into the morning rush. The tube was a blur of noise and elbows. I clutched the metal pole, staring at my reflection in the train window. For a moment, I thought my eyes glowed faintly red. When the train rattled into light again, it Washington's gone. At work, I buried myself in numbers. Screens and spreadsheets blurred into meaningless patterns, but I welcomed the monotony. Liam crashed into my desk before lunch, grinning as usual. "You're quiet," he said. "Didn't think London nights would knock you out so hard." I tried to smile. "Guess I'm still catching up." Sophie raised an eyebrow from macro. The aisle. "You bailed early the other night, didn't you? Lost us in Shoreditch." My chest tightened. "Yeah, couldn't keep up." Noah gave me that soft, sympathetic look again. The kind that made me feel both grateful and exposed. "Don't push yourself too hard. It's a lot, moving here." I nodded quickly, eager to drop it. If I told them the truth, that I'd wandered into a pub that wasn't there, that a bartender with hollow eyes had given me rules, that a woman in crimson had stalked me, I'd be laughed out of the office, or sent home in worse condition. I lasted the day by clinging to normalcy, coffee, emails, noise. By 6, I convinced myself I dreamed it all. But London has ways of breaking delusions. That night, walking home, I cut through Shoreditch. I told myself it was just to prove nothing waited for me there, that I'd walk past the alleys, maybe even laugh at them. The air was damp, sour with old rain, neon smeared against brick, and the crowds had thinned. The melody came before I even realized where my feet had carried me. I stopped in front of the alley. Narrow, slick cobblestones, walls leaning inward like they wanted to smother the light. The same gas lamp hissed faintly above, though I could have sworn the bulb had been shattered before. "No," I whispered to myself. I turned to walk away. But then I saw it, on the wall, smeared in something dark and sticky, handprints, dozens of them, dragging downward, finger marks etched into the grime as though people had clawed for escape. And above them, scratched into the stone with desperate force, the words, "You saw the time." My throat closed. I staggered backward. The melody swelled, echoing between the bricks. The gas lamp sputtered, casting the walls in shuddering light. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw her, the crimson gown rippling at the far end of the alley. I bolted. I didn't care who stared as I ran through Shoreditch, breath tearing at him. Why chest? I didn't stop until I slammed my flat door shut behind me and locked it twice. I slid down to the floor, heart hammering. My reflection stared back at me from the hallway mirror, my hair damp I've sweat, eyes wide with panic. And there, faint but undeniable, a flicker of red glowed behind my pupils. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard whispers brushing against my ear. Fragments of words: stay, belong, chosen ... At 3 in the morning, I sat at my desk, laptop open, typing Forgotten Tavern London into the search bar. Most results were noise. bars with ironic names, blogs about hidden pubs, but buried deeper, I found threads on old forums, posts from more than a decade ago, accounts written in jittery, fragmented sentences. A place only appears if you're lost. The bartender knew my name. She wore red. Her eyes were black. I couldn't breathe when she got close. Don't look at the clo. CK. The post stopped abruptly around 2012. No explanations. No follow-ups. Just silence. I slammed the laptop shut. My hands shook. I didn't realize how long I'd been staring at my reflection in the dark screen until it blinked. My face gone, Gideon's sharp cheekbones and hollow eyes. Staring back, I shoved the computer away and stumbled to bed. But even under the covers, I could feel it. The tavern hadn't let me go. It had followed me into London, and the rules weren't finished. The next week dissolved into fragments. Work became an impossible performance. Nodding at meetings, typing numbers that didn't add you. Pretending not to hear the melody threading through every corridor. Liam teased me about zoning out. Sophie rolled her eyes. Only Noah looked at me long enough to ask, "Are you sleeping at all?" I lied, of course, told him I was just adjusting to the city, still overwhelmed. I couldn't tell him that every night I woke gasping, convinced someone stood at the foot of my bed. The first me it happened. I thought it was sleep paralysis, that frozen, suffocating sensation, shadows bending at the edges of my vision. But the shadow had leaned closer. It whispered my name with a hiss. Armpit rattled inside my skull. I switched on every. But this time, I dug deeper, piecing together stray mentions scattered across ghost hunting blogs, forgotten archives. The words Forgotten Tavern appeared like rot under the floorboards of the internet, traces left by people who sounded just like me. One phrase kept surfacing, breaking the veil. Most posts were incoherent. One described the tavern as a bleed between timelines. Another called it the inn at the edge of forgetting. A few insisted that escaping once wasn't freedom, it was invite app. I couldn't breathe as I read them. At 2 a.m., with the city silent, I didn't expect a reply. But the next morning, one waited in my inbox. Meet me. Tonight, 7 o'clock, cafe at the corner of Old Street and White Cross. My skin prickled. Every rational part. The air sour with burnt espresso. I sat by the window, pretending to scroll my phone. At 7:30, I almost left, but then someone slid in. Oh, the chair opposite me. He was older, late 40s maybe, with hollow cheeks and gray stubble. His coat was frayed, his eyes sharp but tired. He smelled faintly of smoke. "You, Reher," he said quietly. I stiffened. "Who?" "The tavern's newest guest." His mouth twitched, not a smile, but something close. "I'm Daniel. I survived it. Once." I stared, pulse racing. "That's impossible, is it?" He leaned forward. "You wouldn't have found me otherwise. The tavern lets its marked find each other." "Marked," I repeated, the word catching like a splinter. Daniel nodded. He held up his hand, palm outward. Under the skin, faint as veins, lines of crimson light pulsed briefly before fading. "It never leaves you." I pressed my hands flat to the table, willing them to stay ordinary. But I knew, in the mirror, I'd already seen the red. "What does it want?" I whispered. Daniel's gaze flicked to the window, as though checking for listeners. "The tavern isn't a place, it's a fracture, a hunger. It appears when you're lost because that's when you're weakest. But leaving," he shook his head, "leaving isn't escape, it's theft. You stole time that wasn't yours. It wants it back." A chill slid down my spine, but Gideon said. "Gideon is the jailer." Daniel cut in, he tells. "Enough truth to keep you compliant, but he isn't on your side." I swallowed hard, and the woman. Daniel's eyes darkened. "Then you're running out of time." The cafe lights flickered. For a heartbeat, every bulb dimmed, and in the glass window beside us, a reflection shimmered. Not mine. Over mine, his palm was ice cold. "Don't look too long." When the lights flared again, the reflection was gone. I pulled free. What am I supposed to do? Survive, Daniel said flatly. Every midnight you last. Every morning you wake. You weaken the tavern's hold. But if you break too many rules, he hesitated, as if weighing how much truth to give me. You already looked at then why are you still alive? Daniel's eyes were haunted. Because I gave her something else instead. Before I could ask, he stood, pulling his coat tight. Go home, Emma, lock your doors. Liam Steele. For one mad moment, I thought about saying yes, pretending everything was normal. But when I glanced at the window again, I saw her. Not a reflection this time, the crimson gown, standing across the street, her face angled toward me. No movement, no breath, just waiting. I stumbled out of the cafe, my phone buzzing endlessly in my pocket. I didn't look back until I reached the tube entrance. By then, the street was empty. But the melody followed me down the escalator, curling through the crowd like smoke. That N.I.G.T. I didn't dare close my eyes. Every shadow in I caught myself laughing. A sharp, broken laugh. Because Daniel was wrong. I wasn't surviving. I was already hers. I thought I could care at pretending. Go to work, answer emails, laugh at Liam's dumb jokes, nod along when Sophie talked too fast, smile at Noah's gentle concern, pretend that I wasn't unraveling, pretend that London was still London, but the tavern didn't let me. It crept into the daylight. Reflections caught me off guard. The warped grin of Gideon staring back from the office window, the crimson gown flickering in the mirrored doors of the lift. The mirror showed not tiles behind me, but wooden beams and gas lamps. The tavern was bleeding into London. I clung to Daniel's words. Sue, revive until morning, weaken it. But with each sunrise, I felt weaker, not stronger. The red glow in my eyes deepened. My hands trembled constantly. Sometimes I swore they weren't mine at all. Yesterday night, I woke with my phone buzzing beside me. A text, unknown number. Midnight, come back, or she comes to you. I dropped the phone, my stomach plummeting. The melody rose around me. Thou. The room was silent. A knock sounded at the door, 3 slow raps. I froze. Daniel's warning thundered in my head. Don't answer if you hear her knock. The handle turned anyway. I screamed, stumbling backward, but the door didn't open. It dissolved. The wood rippled into smoke, then reformed into something else. A tall wooden door with iron hinges. The tavern's door. I backed away, shaking my head. No, not again. I won't. The lock clicked. The door swung inward. Light bled into my flat, not the golden dawn I'd seen before, but the sickly glow of gas lamps. The smell of stale beer and dust filled the air, and beyond the threshold, the tavern waited, unchanged, eternal. I tried to run toward the window, but the glass was gone. In its place, row WS of crooked shelves lined with bottles. My flat was gone. There was only the tavern. And Gideon. He stood behind the bar, polishing a glass with those long, deliberate hands. His eyes found me instant. Lee, you shouldn't have left. I didn't choose. My voice cracked. You locked me in. I ran because you broke the rules, he said softly. Now, the rules follow you. The air thickened, heavy as lead. Patrons filled the tables, shadows with flickering faces, their whispers swelling into a wave that pressed against my skull. And then she appeared, the crimson woman. She stood at the center of the tavern, her gown flowing like liquid fire across the floor. Her eyes were pure black voids, endless and devouring. She didn't walk, she glided, her presence pulling the shadows toward her. The whispers bent around her, chanting in languages I couldn't understand. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. Gideon's voice cut through, sharp as a blade. It is midnight. Emma Carter. Choose. Choose what? My throat burned. Stay, and belong to her. Or run, and belong nowhere. The crimson woman tilted her head, lips parting, in a soundless laugh. My body shook so hard I nearly fell. I don't want either, I screamed. Then you shouldn't have listened to the song, Gideon said. His reflection in the mirror grinned, jagged and monstrous. The clock on the wall chimed. 1, 2, 3. The sound splintered the air, each strike a hammer in my chest. The crimson woman raised her arms. Her gown stretched into tendrils. Reach, aim for me. Panic took me. I ran. The tavern, hanging open, golden dawn spilling through. I hurled myself toward it, every nerve screaming. The crimson tendrils lashed out, wrapping around my wrist. I screamed as ice burned into my skin. With everything in me, I tore free and flung myself through the door. I hit pavement, cold, wet, real. I staggered to my feet, gasping. I was back in Shoreditch. The alley stretched behind me, empty, silent. The tavern was gone. The sky was pale with dawn. My phone buzzed in my pocket. 4 a.m. I laughed half sob, half hysterics. I was out. I was free. But when I pulled my phone up to check, I froze. The cracked screen reflected my face. And it wasn't mine. The crimson woman's eyes stared back. Black voids ring. D in faint red light. I dropped the phone, shaking. The melody rose in the quiet street, faint but insistent. It hadn't ended. Not yet. And maybe never. Part 3. I used to know my face. But every morning now, when I look in the mirror, I hesitate. Sometimes it's me staring back. Pale skin, dark hair mussed from restless sleep. Circles under my eyes, from nights without rest. Other times, it isn't. Sometimes it's Gideon, lips twisted in a thin grimace. Sometimes it's her, the crimson woman, her black eyes burning through the glass. This morning, I pressed my palms to the sink and forced myself to breathe. The mirror showed me but faint behind my pupils, a glow of red linger. D, I whispered, you're Emma Carter. You're 28. You work in finance. You're not theirs. The words didn't help. At the office, things were worse. Liam barged over before lunch, tossing a file onto my desk. Emma, could you stopped? Mid-sentence, his grin faltering. What? I asked, his brow creased. Sorry. For a second I thought, never mind. He laughed it off, too loud, too quick, and hurried away. Later, Sophie leaned on my desk. We still on for drinks this week, Clara? I froze. What did you just call me? She linked, confused. Emma. No, you said Clara. Her face went pale. I didn't. I wanted to argue, but Noah appeared with his gentle eyes and placed a coffee at my elbow. Thought you might need this. For a moment, I saw black voids in his eyes. Then they blinked, and it was just Noah, smiling carefully at me. I nearly screamed. That night, I dreamt of the tavern again. Not walking into it, not it's time. Instead, I was already behind the bar. My hands polished a chipped glass. My voice spoke, but it wasn't mine. House rules, I said, gravel scraping my throat. You cannot leave before midnight. Do not look at the clock, and do not acknowledge the lady in crimson. When I woke, my throat ached as though I'd been speaking all night. Daniel found me. 2 days later, I didn't know how, maybe the tavern told him. He sat at the bus stop beside me, his coat frayed, his eyes hollow. You're marked, he said without preamble. I know. He studied me, the glow stronger. You don't have much time. Until what? Until you stop being Emma at all. My stomach turned to ice. You told me to survive, that it would weaken the tavern. His laugh was dry, bitter. That's what I told myself too. But it isn't survival, Emma. It's inheritance. The tavern chooses someone new when it tires of the old. You've been chosen. No, my voice cracked. I won't let it. Then you'll need to cut the thread. I looked at him sharply. How? He hesitated, eyes darting around as if the city itself might overhear. Then he Ned closer. The melody. It isn't random. It's the root song, the first note that binds the tavern to this world. If you find where it began, maybe you can sever it. Where? Every city has layers. Old streets under new ones. Forgotten tunnels. When I walk in, that evening, I tried to drown the melody in noise. I cranked music in my flat, turned the TV up loud, even stood by the window just to hear traffic. But the song pierced everything, weaving between notes, whispering in every silence. By midnight, I gave up. I put on my coat and followed it. The streets of London stretched ahead, wet with drizzle, lights blurring on slick pavement. The melody pulled me like a leash, soft but insistent. I walked past Shoreditch, past the alleys I knew, deeper, into the city. My phone buzzed in my pocket, Noah, asking if I was okay. I didn't answer. The closer I came to the Thames, the louder it grew. I stopped at Westminster Bridge. The river was black glass, swallowing the lights. Big Ben loomed above, its face dim in the mist. And beneath the steady hum of the city, the melody rose, pouring from the stone itself. It wasn't a single violin anymore. It was a choir, a chorus of voices layered across centuries, all singing the same haunting thread. The shadows along the river moved strangely. Figures flickered in and out. A woman in Victorian Doctor S, clutching her chest, a soldier in tattered water, but standing under the clock tower, crimson gown rippling in the wind. Her black eyes locked on me. The melody rose to a shriek, and I understood. The song wasn't just in the tavern anymore. It was London. It was everywhere. And it was calling me home. The song didn't leave me after Westminster. It followed me into the underground, into the crowded trains, into the silence of my flat. Every sound bent into it: the scrape of a chair, the hiss of the kettle, the rustle of paper. No matter how loud I made the world, the song was louder still. I stopped pretending at work. Sophie cornered me by the coffee machine, her mouth already opening to scold me about deadlines. But then she froze, her eyes narrowing. Hat's wrong with your reflection. I spun toward the metal. My colleagues avoided me. Even Noah didn't come near, though I caught him watching me with a kind of helpless sorrow. I didn't blame them. I barely recognized myself anymore. Daniel's words nod. Streets slick with rain, past shuttered shops and flickering lamps, until I found myself at an iron gate, rusted, padlocked, stamped with the Washington running. No entry, abandoned tunnel. The song was loud as here. I didn't hesitate. I broke the lock with a brick, slipped inside, and descended into the dark. The air grew colder with every step. My phone's torchlight cut across damp brick walls, peeling posters, rats skittering in the shadows. The tunnel smelled of rust and mold, a history the city had chosen to bury, and woven into dripping silence. The song thrummed, steady, patient. I don't know how long I walked. The tunnel twisted endlessly, deeper and deeper, until it opened into a cavernous chamber. An old underground and platform. The tracks were long dead, covered in moss and soot. But the platform was alive. Shadows gathered in rows. Passengers waiting for a train that would never come. Some in bowler hats, some in tattered uniforms, some in modern coats like mine. Their faces blurred, flickering, but all of them hummed a melody together. I stood frozen, heart in my throat. One of them turned toward me, a woman in rags, her hair matted, her eyes hollow. She raised a trembling hand. "You shouldn't have left," she whispered. Her voice was layered, hundreds of voices in one. "None of us should have left." I shook my head. "I don't belong here." None of us did, but the song binds. It always binds. Her gauze. He dropped to my hands. "It chose you." I backed away. "No, I'm going to sever it." Near St. Paul's, the cathedral looming above like a stone giant. The bells tolled midnight. The song surged louder, vibrating through the ground, shaking the air. And then she was there, the crimson woman, waiting at the steps. Her gown rippled in the wind, fabric alive, twisting like smoke. Her black eyes pinned me where I shrieked. OOD. The song shifted around her, harmonizing, bending. It was hers. She was its heart. She moved closer. Not gliding this time walking, each step echoing too loud, as though the city itself was her stage. I stumbled backward. Stay away. Her lips parted. A hiss of whispers poured out, a chorus of every voice I'd ever heard in the tavern. My knees buckled, and then impossibly she sang. The melody wasn't just sound anymore, it was pressure, searing heat, freezing cold. Every nerve in my body lit up at once. The city blurred, my lungs seized. I screamed but no sound came. The song demanded an answer, something inside me cracked. Words rose in my throat unbidden, burning like fire. I opened my mouth, and I sang back. The melody twisted as my voice Joe, and that hers. For a heartbeat, the world aligned. London and the tavern, living and dead, present and forgotten. My voice wove into hers, binding tighter, pulling me closer. The crimson woman, had tilted. Her lips curved not a smile, but recognition. And in that moment, I understood. The song couldn't be severed. It could only be carried, and I had just taken it into myself. When the bells stopped tolling, I collapsed onto, threading through my breath, my pulse, the rhythm of my steps. With every note, the city shifted. Streets stretched too far, buildings bent at impossible angles. A pub door might flicker for a heartbeat into the tavern's warped frame before snapping back. No one else seemed to notice. People hurried past, faces blurred, voices muffled, as though I was moving through a half-formed dream. Sometimes, when I blinked, they were gone entirely. I thought I was losing my mind until Gideon walked into my office. He didn't. He belonged in the modern light of glass towers and humming computers. Yet there he was, tall and gaunt, his eyes like knives. My colleagues didn't react. Sophie brushed past him as if he wasn't there. Liam joked loudly a few feet away, never breaking stride. Only Noah seemed to sense something was wrong, his gaze flicking nervously toward us, though his eyes didn't focus on Gideon directly. You've carried it well, Gideon said, his gravel voice curling. Beneath the chatter, the song fits you. I stood, hands trembling. Get out. This isn't your office, he said mildly. It never was. It's only another room in the tavern. You still haven't understood that, have you? I shook my head violently. No. I left, twice. His lips curved in something like amusement. You think you escaped? No, Emma, you inherited. The tavern doesn't vanish. It changes its keeper. My knees weakened. No, I won't. You already have. His voice dropped to AW. Hisper. Every rule you broke brought you closer. Every note you sang bound you tighter. Now, only one question remains. Will you resist until you're consumed? Or accept your role and endure? I stumbled back, hitting my desk. I'll never be like you. His reflection in the window, stretched, teeth jagged, eyes hollow. You already are. That night, London shattered. I woke to the sound of the clock striking 12. Not Big Ben, not any clock I knew but the tavern's, deep and thunderous, vibrating through the city. I staggered to the window. The skyline flickered, half glass towers, half wooden beams and gas lamps. Streets stretched like corridors. Pubs blinked in and out of existence, doors opening onto shadows. And she was there, the crimson woman, standing on the street below. Her go. When spreading like a stain across the pavement, she lifted her face, black eyes locking on mine. The song burst out of me, without my consent, tearing my throat raw. Her voice rose in answer, a harmony that made the walls shake. The glass shattered, the tavern poured in, I ran. Corridors bent around me, sometimes my flat, sometimes the tavern, sometimes streets I didn't recognize. Patrons flickered in and out, whispering, reaching, their hands brushing my skin. The crimson woman glided after me, relentless, gown twisting into tendrils that lashed across walls and ceilings. The city and the tavern were merging, folding into each other with every step. I burst into an alley that became the tavern's main room. Gideon waited behind the bar, polishing a glass. His eyes followed me as if this had been inevitable. She comes to claim you, he said softly. One way or another, the tavern will have its guardian. No, my voice broke. There has to be another way. There is. His grin was thin, merciless. Give yourself to her. Step into what you've already become. The tavern cannot be severed, Emma, only inherited. The Cr. Imson woman's whispers swelled, filling the air, drowning every thought. Her tendrils lashed toward me, wrapping my arms, pulling me closer. I struggled, sobbing, screaming, but the song betrayed me. My voice rose with hers, the harmony completing itself. My body bent toward her, as though I'd been hers all along. Her face was inches from mine, waxy skin stretched thin, black eyes endless. Her mouth opened wide enough to swallow me whole, and in the reflection of her eyes, I saw myself. Not trapped, not victim, keeper. I understood. The only way out was in, with the last of my strength. I stepped forward into her, into the void. Silence. Then dawn. I woke in my flat. Light spilling pale through the blinds. The city hummed outside. Normal, alive. For a moment, I thought it had ended. Until I looked at the mirror. My reflection stood behind the bar, polishing a chipped glass. And this time, it smiled. Part 4. I still go to work every morning. I still take the tube. Still buy my coffee. Still stare at spreadsheets until the numbers blur into shapes. From the outside, I'm just another tired Londoner. But beneath it, I know the truth. I'm no longer only Emma Carter. Sometimes, in the office, my hands move without me. Lines blink. And suddenly I'm polishing a glass instead of typing on my keyboard. Once, I looked down and found a chipped pint mug in my grip, full of something dark and old, though no one else seemed to see it. When it happens, I can feel the tavern pressing close, as if its walls are hidden, just under the surface of reality, one thin breath away. The worst part is the reflections. At first, they flicker. Just a flash of Gideon in a window, or the crimson woman in the mirror. Now, they linger. In the bathroom at work, I stared at myself for a full minute, willing the image to load, but it wavered. My eyes hollowed, my cheeks sharpened, my lips pressed into a thin, familiar line. Gideon's face smiled back at me from my own. I smashed the mirror. Sophie found me cleaning. The shards off the floor, my hands bleeding. She froze in the doorway, her voice shaking. Emma, you look. Don't. I snapped. Too sharp. She bit her lip, backed away, and never finished the sentence. Nights are worse. The tavern doesn't wait for me to sleep anymore. It seeps into my flat. I'll be making tea, and the kettle whistle becomes the clock's deep chime. Lines open a cupboard, and instead of mugs, there'll be shelves of dusty bottles. Sometimes I hear footsteps upstairs. I live on the top floor. I tried locking every door, covering every mirror, filling my flat with light, but the tavern doesn't care. It knows me now. I am its door. Daniel was right. I'm marked. But he didn't tell me how fast it spreads. One morning on the tube, a woman sat across from me. She looked ordinary, mid-40s, office clothes, a tired face, but her eyes locked on mine, wide with recognition. You're the one, she whispered. I flinched. What? The tavern's new keeper. Her voice cracked. I can see it. The red behind your eyes. I wanted to deny it, but she leaned forward, desperate. Please, my husband. He vanished. Years ago, he went out for a drink and never came back. Was he there? Her words tumbled, frantic. Was he drinking in your tavern? I couldn't answer. The train rattled on, the crowd oblivious. She began to cry, her hands clutching at mine. I pulled away and fled, at the next stop. But the truth followed me. She'd seen it. Somehow, people could see me now, those who'd lost someone. Those who'd brushed against the tavern shadow. And they knew I belonged to it. That night, I dreamed of Gideon again. But it wasn't him behind the bar. It was me. I stood in his place, a rag in my hand. Glasses lined neatly before me. Patrons filled the room, faces I didn't recognize, and yet I knew their stories. A sailor who drowned, a boy who ran away, a woman who drank herself into silence. They all looked to me. I spoke. Though I didn't choose the words, my voice carried the tavern's weight. House rules: you cannot leave before midnight. Do not look at the clock, and do not acknowledge. The lady in crimson, the patrons nodded, accepting, before, as though time was eating him alive. You felt it, haven't you? He rasped. I swallowed hard. It's in me. All the time. Daniel's gaze burned into mine. It's too late for you, Emma. You've crossed the threshold. No, there has to be a way. There isn't. His voice was hollow. I tried. I resisted for years, but it only breaks you. You either inherit it, or it takes you whole. Then how are you still here? He looked away, shame flickering in his eyes, because I gave her something, a life that wasn't mine to give. And still, she waits. His hands trembled. She come for you soon. When she does, don't run. Running only feeds her. You'll see what I mean. I grabbed his arm. Daniel, what did you give her? But he pulled away, shaking his head. Pray you never learn. And then he was gone, vanishing into the city crowd as though he'd never been. That evening, back at my flat, I poured myself a drink. My hands shook as I lifted it. The amber liquid caught the light strangely, shimmering like something alive. And as I brought it to my lips, a voice whispered behind me, "You served your first drink tonight." I spun. No one was there, but when I looked at the glass, it was empty. The first man followed me on a rainy Wednesday night. I was walking home, he from the office, my umbrella useless against the downpour. The streets glistened black, headlights cutting the mist. When I glanced back, he was there, mid-30s, shaggy hair plastered to his forehead, a suit soaked through. At first, I thought nothing of it. London was full of shadows trailing one another. But then he spoke. "Do you know the way?" His voice, Washington's flat, hollow, almost mechanical. I slowed. "What, the way?" he repeated. "I'm lost." The words pierced me. I quickened my pace, but he followed. "Please, the way." I ducked into a side street, heart pounding, and when I risked a glance back, he was gone. But when I reached my building, he stood at the door. I bolted inside, locked everything, slid to the floor trembling, through the letterbox. His voice drifted in. "Please, the way." The next day, it was a different person. A girl on the tube, maybe 19, mascara streaked down her cheeks. She sat across from me, hugging her knees, rocking slightly. When the train screeched to a stop, she whispered, "Where's the tavern?" I froze. Her eyes snapped up to mine. "You know, Don. T.U." I stumbled out at the next stop, heart thundering. But when I turned back, the carriage was empty. They began to gather after that. In alleys, on buses, in coffee shops, people who looked ordinary until their eyes flew. "ND mine." Then the same questions, over and over. "Where's the tavern? Do you know the way? Is she there?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. But still they came, drawn to me, moths to flame. And slowly, horribly, I understood. The tavern didn't just appear to the lost. It made them. Every time someone brushed against me, every time they heard a thread of the song, they shifted close, or to its orbit. The tavern was spreading through me, birthing new patrons, feeding on despair. I was the beacon. Daniel found me again outside a cafe, his eyes bloodshot, his hands trembling. "They're gathering, aren't they?" I nodded. "Sick. It happened to me too," he said. "But never this fast. The tavern's hungry. It's accelerating." I dawned. "T know what to do?" "You serve them," Daniel whispered, voice cracking. "That's what it wants. Every lost soul finds its way to you, and you hand them over." "No," I shook my head violently. "I won't. He gripped my arm, desperate. Then it'll tear you apart trying. That night, I couldn't bring myself to go home. The thought of the loss waiting at my door was unbearable. I wandered aimlessly through the city until the rain drove me into a pub I didn't recognize. Inside, the air was stale, the lights dim, a few scattered patrons hunched over their drinks. I ordered a pint just to have something in my hands. Up before I could sip. Someone sat beside me, the man from before, the one who'd asked the way. His hair was dry now, his suit pressed, but his eyes were the same, hollow. Parati, he looked at me. I'm lost. My hand trembled on the glass. He slid it from me before I could react, lifted it to his lips, and drained it in one swallow. The glass clattered onto the bar. His eyes rolled back. For a moment, his face flickered, 1,000 different versions of himself flashing across his skin, young, old, smiling, screaming. Then he dissolved into smoke. The pub went silent. No one else noticed. My glass was empty. I staggered out into the rain, shaking, bile in my throat. I had served my first patron, and I hadn't even meant to. Later that night, in the shadows of my flat, Gideon appeared. He didn't speak at first, just stood behind the bar that wasn't there, polishing a glass that gleamed in the lamplight. Finally, he sawed. The first is always the hardest. Shut up. My voice cracked. I didn't choose this. He tilted his head. Neither did I. The weight of his gaze pressed on me until I thought I'd collapse. Then, softer, you'll grow into it. Or it will eat you. Either way, the tavern continues. And with that, he was gone, but the glass remained in my hand, empty, heavy, waiting. The night after I served him, I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the empty glass. It shouldn't have been there. I'd left it at the pub, but it had followed me. Or maybe I had brought it without knowing. The glass glimmered faintly under the lamp, its rim chipped, its sides smeared with something dark. When I touched it, the tavern's cold spread into my fingers, up my arm, into my chest. I whispered, no more. But the tavern doesn't listen. At dawn, someone knocked on my door. I froze. Daniel's words rattled through me. Dawn, answer if you hear her knock. But it wasn't her. It was him. I backed away, shaking my head. Not here. You've got the wrong place. He lifted his gaze to mine, desperate. I can't find my way back. I don't know where I am. Please, help me. Behind him, the hallway shimmered. For an instant, I didn't see my building, but the tavern's corridor, its walls crooked, lamps sputtering, and I knew the tavern had brought him to me. I clenched my fists. I can't. He swayed on his feet. You're the only one who can. My throat closed. I fetched the glass. My hands moved on their own. I filled it with water. But when I looked down, it wasn't water anymore. It was amber, thick, glowing faintly. The tavern's drink. I offered it. He took it with trembling hands, drank, and sighed as though his lungs had filled for the first time. His eyes fluttered shut. His body shuddered once, twice, then dissolved into smoke. When it cleared, he was gone. Only the glass rima. Ined. I collapsed onto the floor, sobbing. I had served again, not by accident. Not in a pub I could flee from. In my own home. That evening, Gideon appeared. I didn't flinch. This time, you've crossed the threshold, he said quietly. The tavern is yours now. I don't want it. He regarded me for a long moment, his eyes, sharp as razors, often just a fraction. Neither did I. Then why me? Because you listened to the song, because you broke the rules, because you survived. He placed the glass on the bar that wasn't there. Survival is inherent. Ends. I shook my head. Tears burning hot. Then take it back. His reflection in the window smiled, jagged, monstrous. But Gideon himself, he only looked tired. My watch is over. I've held it too long. It needs new hands. He stepped back into the shadows. Wait, I cried, but he was already gone. And for the first time since Shadowlog, I realized I was truly alone. After that, the lost came faster, a boy who wandered into my building, asking if I'd seen his mother. A woman on the bus, clutching her purse, whispering, "Where's the tavern?" A drunk who staggered into mine, flat as if he'd been invited, collapsing at my feet. Each time, the glass appeared. Each time, I served. Each time, they vanished into smoke, leaving only silence behind. I hated myself. I told myself I was helping them, giving them rest, release, something richer, as though it delighted in my surrender. One night, as the clock struck 12, I stood at the mirror. My reflection didn't waver. This time, it was me ... but not only me. Behind me, the tavern's walls stretched, gas lamps flickering, shadows whispering. I stood behind the bar, rag in hand, ready to serve, and I realized, the tavern wasn't just following me anymore. I was the tavern. Part 5. London is breaking. At first, I thought it was me unraveling, my mind fracturing under the weight of what I'd become. But no, the city itself is shifting, bending, bleeding into the tavern, and I'm the hinge. It started with small things. Alleys that seemed longer than they should be. A pub door I passed on the way to work that looked crooked for a moment, its sign twisting into the Forgotten Tavern before snapping back. A taxi driver who blinked at me in the mirror, his eyes suddenly hollow, his voice humming the melody under his breath. Now, it's everywhere. Streets stretch endlessly, loops swallowing themselves. I'll turn a corner in Shoreditch and end up in Westminster, as though space itself folds. Crowds thin to shadows when I look too long. Gas lamps flicker where neon signs should be. And every midnight, the tavern's clock tolls through the city. No one else hears it. Or why they do. And they're simply too lost to notice. The rules follow me too. I didn't mean to enforce them at first. But the tavern acts through me. Instinctive, like breathing. One night, on the tube, a man across from me stared at the clock, above the carriage door. I opened my mouth to warn him, but the words came out in Gideon's voice. "Don't," he ignored. "Demi." The moment his gaze lingered on the numbers, the lights in the carriage flickered, the hum of the train warped into the tavern's deep silence. His eyes widened, his body trembling, then he dissolved into smoke, gone in an instant. The other passengers didn't react. They didn't see. Only me. My hand shook the rest of the ride. But deep inside, I knew the truth. The tavern had enforced its rule, through me, and I hadn't stopped it. The lost keep gathering. They follow me in streets, wait outside my building, whisper their questions. "Where's the tavern? Do you know the way?" I try to avoid them, but the glass always appears, and once it does, empty. I don't ask. I can't, because each time I serve, the song inside me swells louder, filling my veins, vibrating in my bones, and part of me likes it. Noah cornered me at work yesterday. He's the only one who still looks at me properly, as though he hasn't given up. "Emma," he said, low, urgent. "What's happening to you? You look different. And people keep disappearing around you." I tried to smile, to lie, but my lips curled into something else, something cold. "I'm not Emma anymore," I whispered before I could stop myself. His face drained of color. He stepped back, shaking his head. "Don't say that," but it was true. The song pulsed in my chest, and for a second, I thought I saw his reflection, his eyes hollow, his mouth whispering words. Alleys and squares until I reached Trafalgar Square. It was empty. No tourists, no traffic, no pigeons. Just silence, heavy and suffocating. And then the square shifted. The fountains flickered into barrels of ale. The statues warped into wooden beams. The paving stones became warped floorboards. I was standing in the tavern, but I was also still in the square. London and the tavern were no longer separate. They were the same, and I was their keeper. The midnight chime rang out, shaking the ground. When it faded, I stood behind a bar that wasn't really there, glasses lined neatly before me, shimmering faintly. Shadows filled the square, gathering at the tables that had appeared where fountains should be. Patrons, their faces, flickered, blurred, lost. They raised their glasses toward me, waiting. My hands moved without command. I filled each glass, slid them forward. They drank, one by one. They dissolved into smoke. The tavern purred inside me, satisfied, and for the first time, I didn't cry. I smiled. I'd thought the Crimson Woman was the tavern's weapon, its predator, stalking those who broke the rules. I was wrong. She isn't the tavern's servant. She is its prisoner. It began 3 nights after Trafalgar Square shifted. I was walking near St. Paul's, the city quiet, the song humming steady in my chest. The shadows bent long around me, and then I felt her, the cold, suffocating presence. The weight of eyes on the back of my neck. I turned, and there she was, the Crimson Woman, her gown rippled, thread stretching, the hunger. But what came out was different. Help me. My breath caught. What? Her lips moved again, cracked and pale. Please, help me. The song inside me trembled, shifting out of tune. I shook my head violently. You're not real. I was you. Her voice cracked, raw, desperate. Once, I staggered back. No. Her gown writhed, fabric twisting as if alive. My pulse hammered. You're lying. Her hand lifted, trembling, skeletal beneath the threads. Why do you think you see in mirrors? Why do you think the gown never tears, never fades? You wear its song. Soon, you'll wear its gown. You'll haunt the next who wanders in. You'll whisper in their ear, suffocate them. With your presence, you'll be the warning and the trap. At first, for days, her words hollowed me out. I saw her in every shadow, every reflection standing just behind me, watching. A black eyes bleeding into mine. At work. Sophie finally snapped. Emma, for God's sake, you're scaring people. You vanish for hours. Your desk is covered in. She stopped, her CE drained of color. I followed her gaze to my hands. Threads. Thin, crimson threads, wrapping around my fingers, faint but growing. I shoved them into my pockets and ran. That night, Daniel appeared again. He looked worse than ever, his coat torn, his eyes ringed dark. You've seen her, haven't you? His voice cracked. I didn't answer. He grabbed my arm. Frantic. She's not just some phantom. She's what waits for you. She's your future if you don't break the cycle. My voice was a rasp. Then tell me how. Daniel's mouth opened, but no words came. His eyes widened, his body stiffened. And then, slowly, crimson threads coiled around his throat. He choked, clawing at them, but they only tightened. His face went red, then purple, his eyes bulging with terror. Emma, he gasped. I reached out helplessly. Stop. Let him go. The threads pulsed once and he dissolved into smoke. Only the faint shimmer of the gown remained in the air. The Crimson One, and stepped out of the shadows. You can't save them, she whispered. Only replace them. I fell to my knees, sobbing. But even through my tears, I knew she was right. At midnight, I stood before the mirror again. My reflection stared back, pale and hollow. Behind me, the tavern stretched. And faintly, at my shoulders, the gown was already forming. Crimson threads crawling, weaving, waiting. Midnight doesn't strike anymore. It erupts. The tavern's chime now rolls through the whole of London, shattering glass, rattling walls, echoing in the marrow of the city. Every night, when the first toll sounds, the streets empty, the air thickens, time buckles, and the tavern consumes. I stood on the south bank, the Thames a black ribbon beneath the stars, the city stir. Around me glass towers flickering into crooked beams, bridges sagging into warped wooden planks. London and the tavern weren't separate anymore. They had merged, bleeding into one eternal midnight. I wasn't alone. The patrons filled the streets, thousands of them, shadows of every era, soldiers, beggars, bankers, children flickering, whispering, raising glasses to a toast. Lie I could hear. Their voices joined the melody that pulsed. The threads of her gown writhed, reaching, wrapping around the air between us. You know what you are, she whispered. What? You've always been. My body trembled. The gown had already begun to. Time, his reflection didn't twist into something monstrous. It was only him, hollow and tired. This is the end, he said soft. Tly, the tavern chooses, every cycle. It binds one of us to keep its. The crimson woman raised her arms. The tendrils of her gown lashed toward me, wrapping my wrists, my throat, pulling me closer. Jeet. On's voice thundered. Decide. The melody split me open. Part of me screamed to run, to fling myself into the river, to vanish. But another part, the song inside me, knew the truth. Running was, and escape. Running only fed it. There was no outside anymore. Not victim. Not even keeper. I saw the tavern itself, walls, beams, clocks, whispers. I was already its spine. My choice wasn't whether to resist. It was whether to embrace. I stopped fighting. I stepped forward into her, into the gown, into the void. Silence, then light. I woke at dawn, sitting at my kitchen table. The city outside was alive again, buses groaning, birds screaming, neon signs humming. London was normal. I touched my face. My skin was mine. My eyes were only brown. For a moment, I thought it was over. Then I looked at the mirror. My reflection stood behind the bar, rag in hand, polishing a chipped glass. Patrons filled the room behind me, whispering, waiting. And when my reflection looked up, it smiled. House rules, it said.